Hi everyone! Today we're going to learn how to add a cue to a behavior. A cue could be either a verbal cue or a hand signal cue, or perhaps an environmental cue that your dog should perform a specific behavior. So for some examples, that would be the word sit or the word down or the hand signal for the word down. All of those are specific cues that let your dog know that you would like them to perform a specific behavior. What I see most often in the field is people who add the cue too early. They start saying sit before the dog even knows what the word sit means. Instead, we want to wait until the dog has a total grasp over the behavior we want, and then we add the cue. We do this for a couple reasons. First, we want to make sure that what we're cueing is a finished behavior. If I have, a cruddy down, I don't want to start associating the word down with a cruddy down. I want to have a really nice down before I'm adding that cue for that behavior. The other reason that we add our cue last is because dogs don't speak English. And it seems to be that the dogs learn the verbal cues much slower than they'll learn our hand signal or body cues because they're always watching our body, whereas we talk a lot without it meaning anything. So it's really important that the dog, when we add that cue, the dog knows what that word is attached to and they have that behavior down pat. So we're only going to add that verbal cue when the dog already understands the behavior and you're willing to bet me $100 that the dog will do it on, say, a hand signal, or if you're doing a loop like you're teaching your go to place, you know that the dog is going to run away, get the cookie, and run right back to the mat. They're in a behavior loop. It's happening every single time. Same thing with capturing. So we're going to use capturing, shaping, or luring to get the dog to do the behavior, and once they know it, then we add the cue. Another time to add the cue is if you know you can make it happen. So for instance, if you're teaching a sit, you ask for the sit and you're using a lure so you can just lure the dog right into that sit position, then you know the behavior is going to happen. You've done it 10 times. Okay, now you might be able to add that cue because we know the behavior is going to happen once we give the cue. I'm going to show you an example of how to add the cue with your go to place behavior. You're going to start your go to place behavior by shaping. You can check out the video Shaping with Novel Objects to get an idea of how to shape and how to get your dog to go to an object, like a placemat. So once your dog is in a behavior loop, which means every time you throw that cookie off, the dog's going back to their mat every single time and they understand what they're getting rewarded for, it's time to add the cue. Now you can either add a hand signal or a verbal cue. I typically start with a hand signal when I'm shaping, but you could start with the verbal if you wanted to. My physical cue to go to place would be a step, look, and point at the mat. So what I'm going to do is, once my dog is in that loop, right before they head back to that mat, I'm going to step, look, and point. And when they do, they go to their place, I click and reward. We're going to start that step, look, and point when the dog is just a foot from the mat. So it's highly likely the dog will complete the behavior and go to the mat. Then I'm going to start adding that cue further and further away from the mat before the dog does the behavior. What they associate is, hey, they're telling me this step, look, and point thing, and that's when I should go to my place. The same holds true for adding the verbal cue. So when they're in that loop of going to place without having any cued behavior, we're just shaping it, I can say, go to place, and then wait for the dog to go onto the mat because I know they're already gonna do it because they're in that behavior loop, and then click and reward on the mat when they get there. So it's pretty simple. All you're going to do is add the cue that you want, either verbal or physical cue, right before the dog does the behavior that we want. And you're going to continue to do that so that the dog associates that specific cue with that behavior. You're going to need to practice in lots of different locations so that your dog understands that that cue could happen anywhere, not just in the house. The other way to add a cue would be to add a new cue from an existing cue. So, for instance, your dog knows how to, say, sit from a hand signal. Your hand signal might be bringing your hand from your belly button straight up to your chest to show the dog that you want them to sit. Now you'd like to add the verbal cue. So what you're going to do is do the new cue, then the old cue, and then the dog will do the behavior. So for instance, if I was teaching it for sit, I would say the word sit, I would give them the hand signal. The hand signal is what the dog knows, so the dog is going to sit automatically. So what the dog starts learning is, hey, when I hear that word sit, she does this hand signal every time that I already know means to put my butt on the ground. So I should just put my butt on the ground when she says the word sit. And that's how the dog makes the association. Sit. Stand. Sit. Stand. Sit. Stand. Sit. I see a lot of clients who say the word sit and give the hand signal at the same time. This is going to cause the dog to learn more slowly because they're always going to watch your body first. So if you're really focused on them learning that verbal cue, you want to separate the two. You want to ask the verbal cue, which they don't know yet. You're going to give them the physical cue of moving your hand up in a sit position. And then when they do the behavior, you're going to click and reward. Pretty soon they'll catch on that the SIT word means put my butt on the ground, and you'll be able to stop using that physical cue or use it whenever you need a little extra helper, since that physical cue is always going to be more salient to the dog than your verbal cue, typically. Being clear with your dog will create a quicker learning process when they know what to expect. First they learn the behavior, then you teach them the cue that asks for the behavior. So go out and practice with your dog. Happy training!
So thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit that little bell button so that you can be notified anytime a new video comes out. If you have questions, make sure you comment below, or if you have ideas for videos or questions you'd like me to make into a video, make sure that you put those in the comments below. Share this with your friends. You guys have a great day and happy training. Yeah, good girl.
Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for our next video. Subscribe now and never miss an episode.